there's not a huge amount of research specific to psychology and endometriosis, but with what was there and with my experience in working with patients with chronic pain, I was able to come up with a program to work with Sylvia. So today, Sylvia and I would love to talk about what that program was. I'm going to introduce some of the techniques that we used, and then Sylvia is going to talk to you about her experience and her perspective on using those techniques, which is an incredibly brave offer and one I think that you will all really appreciate. So endometriosis can be not only physically but psychologically debilitating. The physical pain-related aspects of endometriosis in and of themselves can have serious impacts for our life, impacting our work, our schooling, our social relationships, our intimate relationships, of course, for some women, intercourse. And of course, those very pain-related aspects can have psychological outcomes, particularly depression and anxiety. But depression and anxiety in endometriosis can also occur unrelated to these pain-specific factors, but still endo-specific factors. So we can see anxiety and depression regarding the risk of infertility, the need for constant medical interventions. There can be questions and confusions regarding femininity and sexuality, and of course there can be feelings of powerlessness and uncertainty in living with the condition. Therefore, psychological management of endometriosis is a holistic affair. It is about managing both the pain aspects of endometriosis, but also the psychological factors. And as we have all heard today, and as we all know, there is no one specific cure for endometriosis. Curing Sylvia's endometriosis was not remotely our goal. Our aim was to equip her with strategies that would help her better manage the impact of endometriosis on her life. So let's talk a little bit about the treatment program that we worked through together. We began with developing self and pain awareness, and I really loved when Natasha mentioned about study thyself. This is exactly where it begins within psychology. Really, self-awareness is the platform on which the rest of our work is built. So with enhanced self-awareness, we're better able to discover patterns within our own life. Those patterns might be about food, they might be about environments, they might be about how we use our bodies, they might be about the amount of hours that we work, but we're going to learn about patterns that are unique to our life and how we experience endometriosis. We started with a very quick and simple app that allowed Sylvia to record her daily mood, the severity and type of any pain that she was experiencing, as well as any triggers or stressors that were in her day. And this app allowed Sylvia to download it and to email it to me before sessions so I could see what was going on in her weeks and months. Now, this approach does many things, but one of them is it helps us to learn about the psychology of our own pain. So it's generally accepted that psychological factors, and not just physical factors, influence the amount of pain we perceive and how we experience that pain. So another way of thinking about it is the way in which we think about pain, our stress levels, our emotion states, and the physical health of our body in general will all affect the extent to which we are perceiving our own pain and how we experience and cope with it. So in a moment, Sylvia will be talking to you about her experience of using this diary system. The next technique that we covered together was pacing. Now, pacing is a method that we standardly use with patients who are suffering chronic pain. People cope with pain and respond to their pain in very different ways. So for some people, there will be a cycle of becoming very active and exerting themselves as much as they can, perhaps when pain isn't there, only to burn out, to need rest because they're exhausted, and then to return once again. And research has shown that over time, their pain may get worse and may be flaring up more frequently because they're pushing themselves too far. On the other hand, we can also stop activity at the slightest hint of any pain. And over time, we tend to feel pain earlier if that's our approach. And of course, we can eventually stop participating in a number of things or anything at all. We often say that we have very little choice regarding pain, but we can and we do have choice in how we respond to our pain. And we can learn to take a balanced approach that is outside of those extremes of burnout and then needing rest, or being too cautious and not really, and limiting our life and what we do. Like pacing, goal setting can also be used to look at the activities we do and then gradually over time build our ability to both manage our pain and our ability to approach perhaps activities that were previously scary to us gradually and appropriately so that we can do them. Exercise was one of the areas that we focused on with goal setting with Sylvia. With pain, we can be afraid of exercise, even though within realistic limits, exercise is actually great for us in managing pain. We can also get in that trap we've already spoken of working ourselves too hard with exercise when pain isn't there, but when pain is there, completely doing nothing at all, which of course does affect any exercise training program that we're on, but also leads to a real sense of a kind of loss of control. So I encouraged Sylvia to develop a complete smorgasbord, really, of activities that she could do, including some more gentle ones that she could do even when she had pain. Stress, managing stress, is something we all need to be doing. But managing stress and tension and the effects of it in our life is even more important if we live with endometriosis, because stress will trigger pain. We've already heard a little bit about that and the cycle that can go on there. So Sylvia and I covered a lot. I'm big on stress and learning all about it. So we covered a lot in terms of stress and tension, understanding it specifically for Sylvia, learning how to cope with it. We learned a lot about the brain and what's happening in the brain when we are getting stressed. We learned breathing, relaxation, and lifestyle management techniques for better coping with stress. Now, although there is only one published study that is specific to mindfulness and meditation for endometriosis, there are many, many indicators that it's going to be a good idea. So I encouraged Sylvia to attend one of my group classes to experience and to dive into mindfulness and meditation. So why do we think mindfulness and meditation might be helpful with endometriosis? Mindfulness reduces stress and tension. It activates the parasympathetic nervous system, which of course is going to enhance our immune system. It lowers blood pressure, heart rate, but we've been hearing a lot about inflammation here today, and we're going to hear a lot more about inflammation, meditation, and mindfulness. So particularly at the University of Wisconsin, we're starting to see some research coming out about how mindfulness and meditation techniques may help with chronic inflammatory conditions. So more recently, our work together has been focusing on actively addressing stresses as and when they arise. Ahead of us are techniques and strategies predominantly from positive psychology, and these are aimed at further building Sylvia's resilience, enhancing her well-being. We'll be getting clearer on goals, on vision, on values, on our sense of purpose. So as you can see, there are various things that we can do. These things aren't going to necessarily, they're certainly not going to eradicate pain, but they can absolutely help us to live a better quality of life, to cope better with pain. So I am now going to be handing over to Sylvia. I will add first, Sylvia told me to add this, how do people find you? How do people do your courses? You can find me. The Calm, Conscious and Connected is an online way because obviously not everyone is able to learn meditation in intensive settings. I teach 3-day courses here in Sydney, but you can also experience and learn meditation online. So now I'm going to hand over to Sylvia. I wasn't expecting that either. To talk about her perspective and her experience of the work that we've done together.
1 year ago, I was lying in a hospital bed after my second laparoscopy for endo. My pain was completely out of control, and the hospital had no idea what to do with me. I was on morphine, tramadol, gabapentin, oxycontin, endone, everything you can imagine all at once. I was completely out of it, as you can see. I was hallucinating. I was convinced my room was haunted. My skin was crawling. I couldn't sleep. I couldn't think. I couldn't even see straight. I was an absolute train wreck. And unfortunately, I'm sure most of you can relate to that and know how that feels. So anyway, after 5 days of being in hospital, I was sent home with a huge party bag of drugs to keep my pain under control. But we were panicking. We had no idea, what to take at what time. There was very little instruction, and it was extremely confusing and confronting because those drugs are strong. They're those narcotics and those opiates that we've been talking about that are so dangerous, that trap that we've been hearing about. So my meds journal, which I actually found in my iPhone from that time, was truly horrifying. I mean, yeah, that's 3 days in hospital. And then I was crying next to the potatoes at Woolies, as you can see there. The side effects were getting so bad that Mum wanted to throw them all out. So we had this huge box of stuff and she just wanted to throw them out. And, while I knew a part of me wanted them gone, the other part of me needed my fix. And I really did. I was very reluctant to let her throw them away, which is actually quite frightening to think about that. In the end, and that was actually only after a week being out of hospital. In the end, we went back to my GP because we just didn't know what to do, and he's wonderful and known me since I was born.
That's not her GP.
That's my dad. So Dr. Mack explained to me that most of my symptoms that I was experiencing during that time, like I was having lightning bolt sensations going through my body. I was having joint pain. I was completely insomniac. I felt like I was losing my mind. The constant crying, all of those things. He explained that was the symptoms of being hooked on those drugs, or the effect that those drugs were having on me. The endones, just the rest of it. And that was only after a week. So, I mean, to have those kinds of side effects so quickly, it was terrifying. And the thought of using those kinds of drugs for months at a time as pain relief to me was just really not what I wanted to do. So I'm not the type of person to do things by halves. So I decided to go completely cold turkey and stopped everything that same day after I'd been to see him. And of course, that was even worse. I was constantly crying. I was shaking like a leaf. I was depressed, really depressed. I was having major withdrawals. And if you've ever seen Ewan McGregor in the movie Trainspotting, where the toilet scene, that was me. Mum was desperate to find somebody who could help me and refused to put down the phone until she did. That's just her thing. Eventually we ended up at the Happiness Institute, and that's where I met Dr. Paula. Honestly, at first I had no idea what I was doing there. I'd seen counsellors before when I was younger and I couldn't stand any of them. This one that I used to have just used to sit there, we'd start the session and she'd just sit there and stare at me like that. And I guess that was her signature move, waiting for me to speak and open up, and it just totally didn't work. And it was so annoying that I just used to sit there staring back at her, and we would just stare at each other for an hour. It was one of the weirdest things I've ever experienced. So I was sceptical of Paula. Anyway, she was fantastic, and she gave me direction, which is exactly what I was craving after just so many weeks and months of just having absolutely no direction. I just wanted someone to put me on a path and say, this is what you need to do, and that's exactly what she did. And I think actually that direction, that path that she put me on initially, even that boosted my morale enough for me to start feeling better before I'd even made any changes. It wasn't a drug, and I think just because I was feeling so lost, that direction and taking back some control started to make me feel better. So what she taught me was CBT, cognitive behaviour therapy. The first thing we went through together, as Paula mentioned, was the diary. So she gave me a list of things that she wanted me to keep track of each day using a scale of 1 to 10. I decided to use an app on my phone called Day One. Quickly, patterns started to emerge, and I could see that there were obvious correlations between some of the choices I was making and the level of my pain and mood. Weeks without exercise decreased my energy and made me feel flat. Skipping my daily probiotics and eating the wrong foods would affect my gut. And the things that Tash and a couple of other people have been mentioning about anti-inflammatory, things like that, I mean, they really, really do help, and I have noticed an enormous difference following that type of diet. While I was doing my egg freezing last year during October, I was even more bloated than usual and more fatigued than usual, like just absolutely unbearable and highly, highly emotional. Pushing myself to burnout made me feel defeated, and the more I beat myself up emotionally, the more my pain increased. So, that link between your mind and your body is, I just saw really clear correlations between that. And the good thing about the diary was I could start to see those patterns. I didn't, those things were happening before, but I wasn't really aware of it because I was not taking notes, really. So studying your body like that can have a really, really fantastic effect. Before doing the diary, I couldn't keep track of every appointment and every medication and every supplement. Days without structure were blurring into each other. Endo was sinking its claws into everything that I cared about and slowly pulling them away from me. My job, my relationship, my fertility, my future. I felt useless and totally lost. Diarising has not only been cathartic, but it's helped me take back control. It has become the key to understanding my patterns of behaviour, breaking bad habits, learning my triggers and how to deal with them. It's helped me create daily routines, goals and structure. My goals started small, to drive to the shop, to walk to the shop, to get out of my trackies and put on a pair of pants, which doesn't sound like a lot, but that was kind of a big deal for me. Paula asked me to write a pain scale from 1 to 10 with the different activities I was capable of doing at each number, which that just annoyed me when she first asked me to do that because I wasn't interested. And I think that was because anytime I felt pain, I just wanted to get on the couch. I wanted to go to bed. I was giving up way too soon. And the awesome thing about this was that it taught me that there was actually so many other things that I could keep doing at those different levels of pain. So I didn't have to stop and give up at a 1 or a 2. I could keep going and I could keep achieving things and keep having somewhat of a normal life. So I realised I'd been giving in to pain at a 2 when really I was much tougher than that. I could still exercise at a 3. I could still go for a walk at a 4. And getting out and doing those things, moving around, being outside, they're all so good for your mental health as well. At a 6, I was in bed, but if I concentrated hard enough, I could still write my blog on my laptop. So, it taught me that there are still things that I could do and that I could achieve in those moments where before I would have just given up and not done anything. So to me, that's an example of how I learned to retrain my brain to experience pain differently. And that's exactly what CBT is all about. Looking over my journal, I can see that my pain began decreasing until it actually reached 0, quite consistently. My mood, on the other hand, was going up and up and up until I was hitting 10s on just a regular day. That was a real milestone for us when I walked into the office and I got to tell Paula I was at a 10 on a Tuesday. and that was really, really significant for me. It wasn't from going out and being with my friends, it was just being in my own skin. So I'm not saying that was all due to one thing. Obviously that wasn't all just because I was keeping a diary. This was a combination of everything. And that's what every presenter today has been stressing, that it's a holistic approach and it's a combination of doing all of those things that's what contributes to making you feel better. But I think taking back the control was strengthening my mind. I was feeling more like myself again. I was feeling more in control, and I do think that had an extremely strong power on minimising my pain. Pacing. That was a hard one. I've got an all or nothing personality. I think I inherited that from my mother. So learning to pace myself has been one of the hardest, but one of the most important things that I've learned. In our first visit, Paula gave me a book to read called Manage Your Pain, which is also available at the bookstore out there. Inside, there was a list of the typical characteristics that people with chronic pain may exhibit. And as you can see, I ticked all of those. I was constantly pushing myself to burnout. Whether it was work, study, going out, or exercising, I'd go way, way beyond my limit, rest until I recovered, and then do it all again. Then I turned to the next page of the book and I saw this diagram. So you can see there's the overactivity, which leads to more pain. When you experience more pain, you land on the couch. The longer you're there, the more frustrated you get. And also, as we've heard today, that inactivity, which is what you're doing when you're resting, is actually winds up being worse for you. And I mean, that's taken me a really long time to even hear or learn that, but that's really interesting. And then eventually, when you start to feel better, you go back and do whatever you go back out, partying, or go back to the gym, making up for lost time, go twice as hard, overactivity, and you're back to burnout again. So my life had pretty much turned into a mini flowchart. That was literally the pattern of behaviour that I was just stuck in. But when Paula made me realise that, she sort of kicked me into gear, and gave me a really big wake-up call, and that's when I decided to change and learn to pace myself, starting with the way that I exercise. So I began using a training program, which is something that I never thought I would do. I already had a gym membership and I just used to do my own thing, but it wasn't getting me anywhere. And every time I did go, I'd go for like 2 hours till I couldn't see straight, couldn't barely walk out. If I wasn't sore the next day, I felt like I'd failed. Then I'd be on the couch in pain. My endo would flare up and I'd feel crap. And then I'd be beating myself up. Oh, I'm back to square one. I'm not able to do anything. And you can see that cycle. I'd start to feel better, and then I'd do it again and again and again and again, which is ridiculous looking back on it. So I began using a training program which is designed to gradually build in intensity over 12 weeks. So I'm now able to exercise most days in a healthy way that feeds me energy rather than draining me of it. And when I do have pain, it's much less intense. And I have had flare-ups. I'm not cured, I'm not completely healed, of course, but I've noticed that when the pain does come back, it's much less intense. Once I learned to pace myself in that way, I noticed it naturally working its way into other parts of my life. And most of the time, I take very good care of myself. I'm not a saint, I still like a margarita now and again. And, you don't have to cut everything out completely. You just have to learn to listen to your body. You don't have to be a nun. If you want to eat a loaf of bread and have a bottle of wine, then that's your choice. But listen to your body, and if it's telling you, if that's not agreeing with you, then think about changing your behaviour. Just to wrap up, having a chronic illness like endo is hard work. It's a daily challenge, and believe me, I'm not perfect. There are still times I let my hair down a little too much and I pay the price. To keep things under control requires daily planning and dedication. And sometimes, in spite of all that, it can still get the better of you. But that's when you have to really rely on yourself and rely on your own resilience. Learn to retrain your brain so that you are better equipped to cope with pain. It could mean making some really big changes in your life, really, really big ones. But you have to take control and don't let endo rule your life. I'm just like you guys, I still have bad days, and sometimes I'm still really scared about the future, and I'm by no means trying to sugarcoat a crap situation. Endo is shit, it's awful. But that's what we're all here for, and we're also here because we want to make a change and we want to change our own situation. The value of CBT for me has been incredible, and unlike a painkiller, there are no nasty side effects. The best part is it's empowering, and the tool that you need the most to help you manage your pain is one that you've already got. It's your brain. Study it, challenge it, and rewire it. Thank you.